Welcome to the whole conversation in 20 minutes or less. Today I have these beautiful, amazing mentors of co-creation with me. I love and adore Carolyn Anderson and Catherine Roski. Welcome.
Thank you.
Really
Yeah.
great to be here.
I am thrilled again. Anytime I can talk about the Co-Creators Handbook and what the two of you have created as a voice for co-creation in this world is just a delight, and it's an honor to bring it to many more people. So today we're going to talk about the Co-Creators Handbook. And really, I have my copy here. Carolyn has a copy. You probably do too, Carolyn. But the Co-Creators Handbook is really an important and viable tool and resource for anyone wanting to come into co-creation with a group. So why don't you give us a little bit of a history? How did the Co-Creators Handbook come about? And then we'll talk about who it's for and really what's in this amazing resource.
Okay.
Start?
Sure. I'm going to hold up a copy so that our viewers can see what it looks like. So this version, the Co-Creators Handbook 2.0, came out in November of 2016. And it's actually the fifth book that published by Global Family. And so how this came about was in 1983 when I was working with Barbara Marx Hubbard on her campaign for a positive future. She was seeking to be selected as Vice President of the United States. And my husband and I were part of the management team guiding that endeavor. This process that is laid out in this book, this divine, we call it a divine template. It was revealed to Barbara and me in 1983. And that was the first time I experienced it. And I've been living this model ever since. So in 1986, when Barbara and I and two others co-founded Global Family, we brought this template into Global Family. The vision of that organization is shifting consciousness to unity, love, and co-creation. And we knew that the template in this book was one way to do that. So over the years, we've been sharing this, teaching people this model. And the first couple of books were all about creating group resonance. Those books were called Love at the Core, Connecting at the Heart. And then the first book where we actually laid out the model was The Rings of Empowerment. That was about 20 years ago. And then Catherine and I created the first version of this book about 10 years ago. And just as, society has evolved, we have evolved, processes have evolved. That's why we felt guided to create a new version last year.
Beautiful. So before we get into that divine template and really that model, which I want to talk about, Catherine, why don't you tell us what is co-creation and why is it important now? What is co-creation?
Well, co-creation, as we experience it and understand it, is connecting with our own divine essence, and then with one another, drawing forth the divine in one another. So it's a deep attunement to nature, to our divine nature, to all that is, and allowing that creative force to come through us to in a resonant field to create all that we want to bring into the world. So very different, or I would say an evolution from collaboration or cooperation, because it's really honoring the spiritual aspect.
Excellent. So it's collaboration, cooperation in a group is a beautiful thing. And you're kind of bringing that up an octave and inviting in that sacredness of who we are as divine beings and co-creating with all of that, like honoring that essence of who we are and that divinity that comes through, that impulse of creation that comes through.
Yes, beautifully said.
Beautiful. Thank you. So groups, it's important. You had Global Family. You started bringing together groups. You were noticing this template, this divine template. Tell us more about that. What is this divine template? What is this model for groups and how does it work?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to start by saying that a group can be as few as two. Catherine and I were a co-creative team creating the handbook. So that the group it can be a very small group of two, it could be 10 people, whatever it is. I found in my life that a group of four for example, is a great number because it's small enough that you can really actualize whatever it is that you're here to do. But the model, it's a non-linear model. It's a whole system. So there's many different elements. And I'll just share a few of them with you, but just to know it's not linear. It's not you start step 1, step 2, step 3. When I first experienced it, we actually started with a ceremony, which is one of the steps in the process, but that's how it began for me. But what's essential to the process is to know that the ego personality cannot co-create. We have to be in that essential part of ourselves, our authentic self, you might say the soul self. Only the soul self can co-create. And as Catherine mentioned, all of this happens is in a resonant field of love. If you're not in your heart, if you're not in the love space, you can't co-create. One of the other important principles is looking within for our guidance, knowing that there is a divine pattern, and that by stilling the mind, we're able to access that and act from that place. So those are just a few of the elements of the process.
Okay, thank you. So Catherine, who is this book, this handbook written for? Is it just a group that wants to come together to co-create, to evolve humanity, to evolve ourselves into the next level? Or is it for families? Is it for organizations, workplaces? Who's it written for, and who would benefit?
Well, everyone you just said, all of the above. You know, I think as we're in this stage of our personal and collective evolution, there's such a ripeness for these practices, because as the old is dying away, there's a whole new consciousness, an evolved consciousness that's coming front and center. And as we experience a shift of consciousness within ourselves, then it's like, how do we then bring that into the relational field? We often talk about co-creation as a relational path to awakening. So it's really through the dynamics of the being with another and in a group. And as we want to actualize our own personal purpose and to help really shift the culture, as we bring these practices into being, then we are able to really cultivate that which is true to our hearts, that embodies the values that we so cherish. Mm-hmm. So whether it's in a personal relationship, whether it's bringing it into a project, we've seen it done with churches, businesses, projects of all kinds, and all over the world. So it's definitely encompasses the whole.
Beautiful, beautiful. It really does. One of our themes here is embodying the ethos of whole, and this handbook brings us back into that awareness of the whole system and the whole of who we are to really activate that. I really appreciate that. So one of the other pieces that I'm just mindful of here with this handbook, I have it right here. Can you tell? It's like, oh yeah, it's relational. You were talking about the relationships, and to me it reminds me of accountability and self-organization, accountability, self-responsibility, and that relational piece of who I am to the greater whole, to the greater group. And I bring this up because I'm a part of this other group, many groups, but this one, I'm thinking this leader keeps wanting to push to change the big systems and neglects to look at the work of the shadow, the work at the person, the work at the relationship. It's like, if we just change the monetary system, we'll all be okay again. Or if we just change the governing system, we'll all be okay again. Or we just change that. And he's always looking out at these big systems. And I would love to hear either, and Carolyn's laughing and I would love to hear that, your response to that, because I think that's another important piece of why I pick up this handbook and say this work is important. So I would love to hear either one of you in response to that.
Well, I'm happy to share. I'm just smiling because I feel that so many problems that we face in the world today stem from the fact that people haven't done their personal work. They're not seated in their essence. So, you know, it's sort of a masculine way of being is I'm going to change something out there. That's the problem. And if I shift that, you know, it's going to be just fine. In this process, it always begins with the self, you know, tapping into the self. And that's where the coherence comes from. And so I also noticed that anything that's effective starts small. It doesn't start big. It starts with 2 or more, those people who are seated in their essence, and then tuning into this divine pattern. What is it that wants to happen? And following that guidance. So this is an inside out job as opposed to an outside in.
Well, Catherine, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm just reminded of the quote that I think many are familiar with of Einstein's, that no problem can be solved at the level of consciousness of which it was created. So in order really to come forth with the solutions that are so vital to these times, takes an elevated consciousness, and we have in the handbook like decision-making processes, is attuning to the design of creation. So it's really that deep listening, what wants to emerge. It's so much more of a feminine approach to life and to creation. And in that, then as we together really access the collective intelligence, then we can come forth with something that actually is a new, and it's attuned to what it is that is needed in these times.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. You mentioned one thing, so I want to clarify one piece or define one piece, and then I want to define 2 other pieces. You mentioned the essence, Carolyn. You're talking about we're coming from essence. If this is the first time someone's heard that, watching this today, I would love for you to define that for us. What is our essence? How do we come from our essence?
Okay. Well, the very first circle in this guidebook is awakening the co-creative self, awakening the authentic self. So I think if we just take a step back and reflect at our own nature, we can experience that there are times when we are in our conditioned personality self, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's part of my conditioned personality self that's very fun. You know, that's great. But there's another aspect of our being that lies at the core, it lies at the center, it lies in our hearts. And it is the impulse of creation manifesting as us. And that is the part that co-creates. It is, as I said earlier, you might call it your soul self. And when you strip away that personality, just leave that on the table for a moment. This is who we are. We are divine intelligence in person.
Beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. We've talked about resonance and we've talked about coherence. Those 2 words popped up just a minute ago, and I would love for you to clarify and further define that. What is resonance, and what is this coherence piece that we're talking about?
Well, I think of orchestra in terms of resonance, and when all the people in the orchestra are actually offering their gifts in a beautiful way that creates music that we all are uplifted by, there's a resonance created there and present there. As we experience it in our personal relationships, it's really coming from the heart, being in the field of love. And so when something arises that creates separation, or we get stuck in some egoic aspect of our being, or we feel right or have judgment or all of that, that breaks the resonant field. And so to come back into resonance means really focusing on creating trust and safety and opening the heart and forgiveness and those kind of qualities and actions. And coherence then is when there's really, we're in resonance, and when things come into coherence, it's clear, and the direction that we want to move in is clear, and we feel like lined up with the force of creation in what we're bringing forth.
Beautiful. Okay, so one last question that I think is really important of why this handbook is so important, and using it as a tool and a resource for everyone. I recommend it to everyone, and we'll have links to where you can find it, and bios and all of those things, the websites in the description below this video. But the one piece that I would love to hear is you're talking about, if Einstein's quote says, we can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it, I love that, then co-creation is one way to help us come into a higher level of consciousness together as the collective and bring through new and unique and innovative ideas. I would love for you to speak on that just for a second of really what is the result? What is your experience of coming together in co-creation? What happens when we get to that level? Why should somebody come into a group and try to practice co-creation?
You know, Bruce Lipton, who's an evolutionary biologist, has taught us that in a cellular structure, the intelligence lies in the membrane. It doesn't lie within the cell, it lies in the membrane that surrounds those cells. So same thing happens in a group where two or more are gathered in resonance, in alignment and coherence. The divine intelligence that we are, that we can access at that higher frequency, lies in the field that surrounds that group. So that's why it's so important to come together in a group, because that's how we access this higher coherence that that is evolving us. It evolves each of us.
Beautiful. Catherine, do you want to add something to that?
Well, just an example of co-creation in action is Hummingbird, our community here that Carolyn and I and others are co-founders of. And we co-founded it 20 years ago with these principles and practices. So this is foundational to the community. And here we are 20 years later, still thriving and growing and evolving and learning a lot. We say we're in the laboratory of co-creation. But I feel that a lot of our success is due to having these practices in place and really utilizing them.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you both for bringing this wisdom to Earth and to humanity, and may it live long as we really move into this new evolutionary phase that we're in. So thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for being such a great co-creator.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And for all the great work you're doing in the world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both. And thank you all for tuning in to the whole conversation. And hopefully that's been 20 minutes or less. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now.